At brunch, my daughter-in-law said, "We've decided not to invite you for Christmas." I just nodded. But when I canceled the catering and stopped paying the mortgage, suddenly everyone had time to call me. I never expected those words to come out of Jennifer's mouth with such casual cruelty. The elegant restaurant around us continued buzzing with Sunday conversation, but in my little corner of the world, everything went silent. My son David stared at his plate, avoiding my eyes. "Mom, it's just that we want something more intimate this year," he finally mumbled, still not looking at me. I wrapped my fingers around my water glass, focusing on the coolness against my skin to ground myself. "I understand," I said, though I didn't. Not really. How could I understand being excluded from Christmas when I'd spent the last 5 years making their celebrations possible? Since Robert died, I'd been the invisible hand keeping their perfect life afloat, the mortgage on their Tudor-style home that they couldn't actually afford, the catering for their lavish holiday parties where Jennifer paraded around like the perfect hostess, the private school tuition for my grandchildren that they insisted was necessary for networking. None of it would exist without me, but they didn't know that. I'd made sure of it. "It's just that Jennifer's college friends are coming with their families and the house will be full," David added, as if that made it better. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. Jennifer nodded, her blonde hair bouncing perfectly. "We'll do something with you after the holidays. Martha, maybe in January?" Like an afterthought, like an obligation to be scheduled and then checked off a list. I forced a smile. That sounds lovely. The rest of brunch passed in a blur of small talk and mimosas. I asked about the grandchildren's school performances and soccer games. I commented on the weather and Jennifer's new highlights. I played my part perfectly, just as I had for the past 5 years. The dutiful mother and grandmother who never complained, never demanded, never imposed. As David drove me home to my modest 2-bedroom condo, the silence between us felt heavy. He pulled into my driveway but kept the engine running, a clear signal he wouldn't be coming in. "Thanks for brunch," I said, gathering my purse. "Mom," he started, then stopped. For a moment, I thought he might apologize, might show some flicker of the boy I raised. Instead, he said, "We'll call you about January, okay?" I nodded and stepped out of the car. He didn't wait to see me enter my home before driving away. Inside, I moved mechanically through my Sunday routine. I changed into comfortable clothes, made a cup of tea, and sat in Robert's old armchair by the window. The afternoon light filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows across the living room. "They don't want me for Christmas, Robert," I whispered to the empty room. After everything, I thought about the folder in my desk drawer, the one containing all the bank statements and transfer records. Every month for 5 years, I'd been transferring $3,200 to cover their mortgage. Another $1,200 for the children's school. Not to mention the gifts that were really necessities. Groceries when David was between jobs, car repairs when Jennifer decided they needed a new SUV despite their credit card debt. I never told them it was me. After Robert died and the life insurance paid out, I let them believe David's struggling investment firm had finally turned the corner. It was easier that way, for them to think they were successful on their own, for them to maintain their pride. But pride doesn't keep a roof over your head. Pride doesn't feed your children. Pride doesn't pay for Christmas catering that costs more than my monthly expenses. I opened my laptop and navigated to my banking portal. The automatic transfer for next month's mortgage payment was scheduled for the 1st, just 3 days away. My finger hovered over the mouse. Would I really do this, after 5 years of silent support? My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "David forgot to ask. We're doing the usual Christmas catering from Giuseppe's. Can you handle that again this year? Even though you won't be there, we'd really appreciate it. Same as last year, for 30 people. No, please." No acknowledgement that I'd paid for their Christmas feast every year since Robert died. Just an expectation, something inside me, something that had been bending and bending for years, finally broke. I canceled the scheduled transfer for the mortgage. I typed a brief email to Giuseppe's Catering canceling the holiday order. I logged into the private school's parent portal and withdrew my direct payment authorization. Then I closed my laptop, picked up my tea, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. The peace that comes with finally valuing yourself enough to say, no more. They had decided not to invite me for Christmas. I had decided not to be their secret ATM anymore. It took exactly 3 days for my phone to start ringing. The first call came from David, of course. I let it go to voicemail. Mom, there must be some mistake with this school. They called saying the tuition payment was declined. Call me back. His voice held no concern for me, just confusion about the money. 2 hours later, Jennifer called. Martha, it's Jennifer. Giuseppe says you canceled the Christmas catering. There must be some misunderstanding. Call me ASAP. Again, no, how? Are you? No. Is everything okay? Just panic about their holiday plans falling apart. I sat in Robert's chair, watching my phone light up throughout the day. By evening, I had 12 missed calls and 8 voicemails, each more urgent than the last. I turned my phone off and poured myself a glass of wine. For the first time in 5 years, I didn't rush to solve their problems. Instead, I pulled out an old photo album from the bookshelf. Robert and I on our wedding day, so young and full of hope. David as a toddler, riding on his father's shoulders. Family vacations where we'd pinched pennies to create memories. When had it all changed? When had I become nothing more than a financial safety net? After Robert's sudden heart attack, everything shifted. I was 63, suddenly alone in our 4-bedroom colonial house that felt too empty, too full of ghosts. David and Jennifer swooped in with what seemed like concern. Mom, you shouldn't be in this big house alone, David had said, sitting at my kitchen table a month after the funeral. It's too much to maintain. Jennifer nodded, her face a mask of sympathy. We've been looking at houses in Oakwood Estates. It's a beautiful neighborhood with excellent schools for the kids, but with the market the way it is, I knew what was coming before they asked. They wanted the house, my house, as a down payment for their dream home. A house they couldn't afford on David's struggling investment firm salary and Jennifer's part-time work as a real estate agent. You could move into something smaller, Jennifer suggested. There are those nice condos by the lake. You'd have no yard to maintain, and the community has activities for seniors. Seniors, the word stung. I was a widow, not an invalid, but I agreed. I sold the house Robert and I had lovingly renovated over 30 years, gave the proceeds to David and Jennifer for their down payment, and moved into a modest condo that cost a third of what our home had been worth. I told myself it was the right thing to do, that David and the grandchildren deserved the stability, that Robert would have wanted them to have a good life. What I didn't expect was how quickly I'd be forgotten once the papers were signed. The first few months, they invited me over regularly. Sunday dinners, school plays, soccer games. I was included, if not central. But slowly, the invitations dwindled. Jennifer began making comments about my clothes. Don't you have something more current, Martha? My cooking. The kids are used to organic now. My opinions. That's a very outdated way of thinking. Then came the financial requests. Small at first. Dad's life insurance paid out well, right, Mom? David asked one day. My firm is having a temporary cash flow issue. Could you help us this month with the mortgage, just until my commission comes through? 1 month turned into 2, then 6, then permanent. I never said no. I never mentioned that the life insurance barely covered my own expenses and that I was dipping into my retirement savings to help them. I never revealed that their temporary financial problems were costing me my security. Meanwhile, Jennifer's expectations grew. The children needed private school connections. The house needed a renovation to keep up with neighbors. Christmas had to be catered because everyone in their circle had professional holiday dinners. Each time I received a request, always framed as temporary, always presented as essential, I transferred the money silently. No questions asked. No recognition expected. Last Christmas had been the breaking point, though I hadn't realized it then. I'd spent weeks choosing perfect gifts for everyone. A cashmere sweater for Jennifer, golf clubs for David, thoughtfully selected toys for each grandchild. I'd arrived early to help set up, bringing homemade cookies from Robert's mother's recipe. Jennifer had taken one look at the cookies and said, "Oh, we don't need those. The caterer is bringing petit fours." My cookies were relegated to the kitchen, never served. My gifts were opened with cursory thanks before everyone moved on to the main event, the extravagant presents David and Jennifer gave the children. Presents I had unknowingly financed. During dinner, I was seated at the far end of the table, away from the children, beside Jennifer's hard-of-hearing uncle. I could barely participate in the conversation. When I tried to share a Christmas memory of Robert, Jennifer quickly changed the subject. "Let's keep things upbeat, shall we?" she'd said with a tight smile. I'd driven home that night with tears in my eyes, but still, I transferred the money for January's mortgage payment the next day. Still, I continued the cycle. Until now. I closed the photo album and walked to my desk. I pulled out the folder containing 5 years of financial records, bank transfers, tuition payments, catering receipts, cash loans that were never repaid. All totaled, I'd given them over $275,000 since Robert died. More than half of my retirement savings. For what? To be excluded from Christmas? To be treated as an ATM rather than a mother and grandmother? My phone started ringing again. This time I answered. Mom? David's voice was tight with panic. What's going on? The mortgage company called. They said the payment didn't come through. That's right, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. What do you mean, that's right? There must be some mistake. No mistake, David. I've decided not to make the payment this month. Silence, then. Mom, what are you talking about? You know we're counting on that help. Like I was counting on being included in Christmas? The words came out before I could stop them. Is that what this is about? You're punishing us because we wanted one Christmas to ourselves? That's childish, Mom. I felt a flash of anger, hot and clarifying. Childish? I've paid your mortgage for 5 years, David. I've paid your children's tuition. I've funded your lifestyle, all without recognition, all without thanks. And the one time I expect to be included in a family holiday, I'm cast aside as an inconvenience. Mom, that's not... It is, David. And I'm done. I've helped you build a life you can't afford. And in return, you've pushed me further and further to the margins of that life. Not anymore. So you're just cutting us off? Over a Christmas invitation? His voice rose. What about the kids? Their school, our house? Those are your responsibilities, David, not mine. I've enabled this situation for too long, and it stops now. You can't do this. We have payments due. Plans made. I just did, I said softly, and hung up. My hands were shaking, but for the first time in years, I felt something like freedom. The weight of secret responsibility lifting from my shoulders. My phone immediately rang again. Jennifer this time. I let it go to voicemail. Martha, this is completely unacceptable. David told me what you said. You can't just pull the rug out from under us because you're feeling left out. You're being selfish and petty. Call us back immediately. Selfish. Petty. For 5 years, I'd sacrificed my financial security, my retirement dreams, even my self-respect to keep them afloat. And I was the selfish one? I turned off my phone again and walked to the balcony of my condo. The December air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine from the small Christmas tree I'd set up in my living room. A modest tree for my modest life. But it was mine. In the morning, I would call my financial advisor. I would reclaim what was left of my retirement. I would finally start living for myself, and perhaps, in the distance, I would start looking for a small house by the sea. Something Robert and I had always dreamed about, but never achieved. A place where the sound of waves could drown out the noise of ungrateful children and entitled in-laws. A place where I could finally be Martha again, not just David's mother or Jennifer's ATM. Tomorrow would bring more calls, more demands, more guilt. But tonight, watching the stars appear one by one in the winter sky, I felt at peace with my decision. For the first time in 5 years, I chose myself. And it felt right. The next morning, I woke to 27 missed calls and a dozen text messages. I scrolled through them briefly, noting the escalating urgency. Mom, we need to talk about this. Martha, you're being ridiculous. The school is threatening to withhold the kids' registration for next semester. Mom, please call us back. This isn't fair. Fair. The word lingered in my mind as I made my morning coffee. What exactly was fair about our relationship these past 5 years? I called my financial advisor, Richard, who had been Robert's friend for decades. He answered on the second ring. Martha, good to hear from you. What can I do for you today? I need to make some changes, Richard. Significant ones. An hour later, I sat in his office as he reviewed my financial situation, his expression growing increasingly concerned. Martha, you've withdrawn nearly 60% of your retirement savings in 5 years. At this rate, you'll be completely out of funds in another 4 years. I nodded, unsurprised, but still feeling the weight of those numbers. These regular transfers to David's account, $3,200 monthly. That's more than most mortgages in this area. It is their mortgage, I said quietly. Richard looked up sharply. You've been paying their entire mortgage? Does David know that's coming from your retirement funds? He knows it's coming from me. He doesn't know I'm draining my savings to do it. Richard removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Martha, this isn't sustainable. Not for you. I know. That's why I'm here. I need to stop all automatic transfers, and I need to figure out how to make what's left last for the rest of my life. We spent the next 2 hours restructuring my finances. By the time I left Richard's office, I had a clear picture of my situation. It wasn't as dire as it could have been. I still had my condo, paid for with the small portion of the house sale I'd kept for myself. I had about 40% of my retirement savings left. If I was careful, if I made smart choices, I could still have a comfortable, if modest, life. The sense of relief was overwhelming. My next stop was the bank, where I formally canceled all automatic transfers to David's accounts. The banker asked if there was a problem. No, I said. Just a long overdue correction. On the way home, I drove past a real estate office. On impulse, I pulled over and went inside. A young agent greeted me warmly. I'm looking for information on small coastal properties, I said. Nothing fancy, just peaceful. Retiring to the beach? She asked with a smile. Something like that. She pulled up some listings on her computer. There's a small development in Sea Pines. Retirement community, but not one of those institutional feeling places. Individual cottages, community center, beach access, very quiet, very charming. I looked at the photos of small, neat cottages with wraparound porches, blue water visible in the distance, palm trees swaying in the breeze. It's about 2 hours from here, she continued, close enough for family visits, far enough for peace. Family visits. Would there be any after what I'd done? The thought gave me pause, but not enough to change my mind. I'd like to see them, I decided. Can we arrange a visit for this weekend? Back at my condo, I finally turned my phone back on. The barrage was immediate. 3 new voicemails, all from Jennifer. Martha, this is completely unacceptable. The mortgage company has sent a late notice. David is beside himself. How could you do this to your own son? If you don't call us back by tonight, we're coming over. This is outrageous. I deleted them all without responding. Then I went to my bedroom closet and pulled out the suitcase I'd used for my last vacation with Robert 5 years ago. We'd gone to Maine, stayed in a little bed and breakfast overlooking the Atlantic. It had been perfect. I began packing a few essentials for my weekend trip to Sea Pines. As I folded a sweater, I heard a sharp knocking at my door, so they'd made good on their threat. Earlier than expected, but not surprising. I took a deep breath and went to answer. David stood there, his face flushed with anger. Jennifer hovered behind him, arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin line. Mom, what the hell is going on? David demanded, pushing past me into the living room. I closed the door calmly. Hello to you too, David, Jennifer. Don't hello us, Jennifer snapped. You know why we're here. I gestured to the sofa. Why don't you sit down? I don't want to sit down, David said. I want to know why you've suddenly cut us off without warning. The mortgage is due, the school needs tuition, and Giuseppe's won't reschedule our Christmas catering this late. I looked at my son, truly looked at him, and saw a stranger. A 42-year-old man who had never learned to live within his means, who had taken his mother's generosity for granted, who stood in my living room not with concern for my well-being, but with indignation that his lifestyle was being threatened. I've made some financial decisions, I said evenly. I can no longer support your household expenses. Can't or won't, Jennifer challenged. Both. David ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like his father it made my heart ache. Mom, if this is about Christmas, it's not just about Christmas, I interrupted. It's about 5 years of being treated like an ATM rather than a mother. It's about sacrificing my security for your lifestyle. It's about being pushed further and further from your lives while still being expected to fund them. Jennifer's face contorted with indignation. That's completely unfair. We've always included you. Have you? I asked quietly. When was the last time you called me just to chat, not to ask for money? When was the last time you brought the children over just to visit, not because you needed a free babysitter? When was the last time you acknowledged any of my contributions to your life? David shifted uncomfortably. Mom, we've been busy. You know how it is with the kids and work. Not too busy to plan an elaborate Christmas party that I'm paying for but not invited to, I pointed out. It's just one Christmas, Jennifer exclaimed. You're acting like we've banished you forever. I stood up, suddenly weary of the conversation. I've made my decision. I can't continue supporting you financially. I need to secure what's left of my retirement. What's left? David's expression changed. Mom, are you having money problems? For the first time, I saw a flicker of genuine concern in his eyes, but it was too little, too late. I've spent over half of my retirement savings supporting your family, David. That stops now. Jennifer gasped. Half? That's impossible. It's just been the mortgage and a few expenses. I walked to my desk and retrieved the folder of financial records. Here, every transfer, every payment, every loan that was never repaid. 5 years worth, $340 to be exact. David took the folder with shaking hands. He flipped through the pages, his face growing paler with each one. Mom, I had no idea it was this much. Of course you didn't. You never asked. You just took. Jennifer peered over his shoulder, her expression hardening. Well, it was your choice to help us. No one forced you. Jennifer. David shot her a warning look. What? It's true. If she was going to hold it over our heads, she shouldn't have offered. I didn't offer, I said calmly. You asked, repeatedly. And yes, I chose to help. That was my mistake. I'm correcting it now. David closed the folder, looking dazed. What are we supposed to do? We can't afford the mortgage on our own. The kids' school, those are decisions you'll have to make as a family, I said. Downsize, transfer to public school, get second jobs. Do what millions of other families do. Live within your means. Jennifer's face flushed with anger. So that's it? You're just abandoning us because you didn't get a Christmas invitation? I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm simply stopping the financial support. You're welcome to visit me anytime. As family, not as financial dependents. They left an hour later, the folder of financial records clutched in David's hands. Neither of them hugged me goodbye. Jennifer didn't even look at me as they walked out. David paused at the door, his expression a mix of anger, confusion, and something that might have been shame. This isn't over, Mom, he said quietly. I know, I replied. After they left, I finished packing for my weekend trip to Sea Pines. The real estate agent had confirmed our appointment for Saturday morning. I found myself looking forward to it with unexpected excitement, the first trip I'd planned just for myself in years. Friday morning, I loaded my suitcase into my car and set off for the coast, leaving my phone behind on purpose. 2 hours of driving with just the radio for company felt liberating. No demands, no guilt trips, no financial emergencies to solve. Sea Pines was everything the photos had promised, a quiet community of pastel-colored cottages nestled among swaying palms. The real estate agent, Brenda, met me at the community center, a cheerful building with a library, game room, and small cafe. We have 3 available units, she explained as we walked the palm-lined streets. All single-story, 2 bedrooms, with screened porches and small gardens. The first cottage was pale yellow with white trim, set back from the road. Inside, sunlight streamed through large windows, illuminating hardwood floors and an open floor plan. The kitchen was small but efficient, the living room cozy with built-in bookshelves. The master bedroom has a view of the water, Brenda said, leading me through. I stepped into the bedroom and caught my breath. Through the large window, I could see past the community's walking path to the blue expanse of the Atlantic. The sound of waves drifted in on the breeze. It's perfect, I whispered. Would you like to see the others? Brenda asked. No, this one feels right. We discussed the details over lunch at the community cafe. The price was reasonable, well within what I could afford with my remaining savings, especially if I sold my condo. The monthly association fee covered all exterior maintenance, landscaping, and access to community amenities. Many of our residents are in similar situations, Brenda mentioned as we sipped iced tea. Starting fresh after life changes. Divorces? I asked. Some. Others are widowed. Some just decided they were tired of living for everyone else. She smiled knowingly. Family dynamics can be complicated. I thought of David and Jennifer, of the chaos I'd left behind. Yes, they can. I didn't make an offer that day. I wanted to think it through carefully, but I knew in my heart I'd found my new home. As I drove back to my condo on Sunday evening, I felt a sense of possibility I hadn't experienced since Robert died. My answering machine was blinking furiously when I returned. 14 messages. I pressed play, bracing myself. The first few were from David and Jennifer, their tones ranging from angry to pleading. Mom, we need to talk about this. Call me back. Martha, you're being unreasonable. The children will be devastated if we have to move. Then came one from my sister, Ellen. Martha, what's going on? David called me in a panic, saying you've cut them off. Call me when you get this. Two from friends who'd apparently also heard from David. Then, unexpectedly, one from my 12-year-old granddaughter, Emma. Grandma? It's Emma. Mom and Dad are fighting a lot. They say we might have to move or change schools. Dad said it's because you're mad at them. Are you mad at me too? Please call me back. My heart clenched. Emma, the quiet one who always had her nose in a book. So much like I had been at her age, the one who still hugged me enthusiastically at family gatherings, who asked about my garden and remembered my birthday. No, I wasn't mad at Emma or her 9-year-old brother, Jack. They were innocent in all this. I picked up the phone and dialed Emma's number, hoping she had her own phone and not just access to her parents. Grandma? Her voice was small, uncertain. Hello? Sweetheart, I got your message. Are you mad at us? No, Emma. Not at you or Jack. Never at you. Then why won't you help Mom and Dad anymore? They said we might have to sell the house and that I can't go to Westlake Academy next year. I sighed, trying to find words a 12-year-old could understand. Sometimes adults make decisions that aren't good for them in the long run. Your parents have been depending on me in ways that aren't healthy for any of us. Because you give them money, smart girl? Yes, because I give them money. Money I need for my own future. Oh, she was quiet for a moment. Dad never said it. Was your money? He just said you always helped. I know, sweetheart. Are you still coming for Christmas? The innocent question caught me off guard. I wasn't invited this year, Emma. What? But you always come for Christmas. Who's going to make the snowflake cookies? Despite everything, I smiled. Your mom told me you all prefer the caterer's desserts. That's not true. Your cookies are the best part. Mom just says that because she can't bake. I laughed, genuinely laughed, for the first time in days. Grandma, can I still come see you even if we move? Of course you can, anytime. In fact, I might be moving too, to a pretty place by the ocean. Really? Can I visit you there? I would love that, Emma. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet living room, thinking. I couldn't go back on my decision. David and Jennifer needed to learn financial independence. But the children shouldn't suffer. For their parents' mistakes, perhaps there was a middle path. The following Wednesday, my sister Ellen showed up at my door unannounced. We need to talk, she said, brushing past me into the living room. David called me 3 times this week. He says you've gone off the deep end. I sighed, closing the door. Hello to you too, Ellen. She turned to face me, arms crossed. At 66, Ellen was still the image of our mother, tall, angular, with a no-nonsense expression that could wither flowers. Martha, what's going on? David says you've cut them off completely, that they might lose their house. Over a Christmas invitation? I gestured for her to sit. Would you like some tea? I don't want tea. I want an explanation. I sat down anyway, smoothing my skirt. It's not about Christmas, Ellen. That was just the final straw. Slowly, I explained the situation. The 5 years of financial support, the gradual exclusion from their lives, the steady drain on my retirement savings. Ellen's expression shifted from skepticism to concern as I spoke. I had no idea, she admitted finally. David always said his investment business was doing well. He wanted everyone to believe that, including himself, perhaps. Ellen leaned forward. But Martha, their family, if they need help, they need to learn to stand on their own feet, I said firmly. I've enabled their financial irresponsibility for too long. It has to stop. And the children? What about them? I thought of Emma's voice on the phone. I'm considering setting up education funds for Emma and Jack, but directly for their education, not through David and Jennifer. Ellen nodded slowly. That's actually quite reasonable. She paused. David didn't mention you'd been paying their mortgage for 5 years. I'm not surprised. It's easier to paint me as the villain than admit the truth. We talked for another hour. By the time Ellen left, she had a clearer picture of the situation and was considerably less critical of my decision. You've always been the soft touch, she said as she hugged me goodbye. It's about time you stood up for yourself. 2 days later, I received a formal letter from a lawyer representing David and Jennifer. They were demanding I continue the financial Support, claiming I had created a dependency and had an obligation to maintain their standard of living. I called Richard immediately. He laughed when I read him the letter. "That's not how the law works," he assured me. "You have no legal obligation to support your adult son's lifestyle. I'll have our legal department send a response." The letter was a new low, even for them. Trying to legally force me to continue funding their extravagance, it was beyond entitled. It was delusional. I spent the next week finalizing my plans. I made an offer on the yellow cottage in Sea Pines, which was accepted. I listed my condo with a local real estate agent. I consulted with Richard about setting up education trusts for Emma and Jack, and I waited for the inevitable confrontation that I knew was coming. It arrived on a Sunday afternoon. I was sorting through belongings, deciding what to keep and what to donate for my upcoming move, when the doorbell rang insistently. I opened it to find David, Jennifer, and both children standing on my doorstep. Emma immediately broke away from her parents and hugged me. "Grandma, I missed you." I hugged her back, my heart warming. "I missed you too, sweetheart." Jack hung back, looking uncertain. At 9, he was more susceptible to his parents' moods, and their tension was palpable. "Can we come in?" David asked. Stiffly. I nodded, stepping aside. Of course. Jennifer marched in, her eyes immediately taking in the boxes scattered around my living room. "What's all this?" "I'm moving," I said simply. David's head snapped up. "Moving? Where?" "Sea Pines. It's a coastal community about 2 hours from here." "You didn't tell us you were moving," Jennifer accused. "I wasn't aware I needed your permission," I replied mildly. Emma looked around at the boxes. "Is your new house by the ocean like you said, Grandma?" I smiled at her. "Yes, it is. You can hear the waves from the bedroom window." "Cool." Jack finally spoke, his curiosity overcoming his caution. "Can we visit?" "Of course you can," I said, ignoring Jennifer's tight expression. "Anytime." "Children," Jennifer said sharply, "go watch TV in Grandma's bedroom while we talk." "But Mom," Emma began. "Now, Emma." The children reluctantly retreated to my bedroom. Once they were gone, Jennifer rounded on me. "So this is your solution? Running away to the beach while we lose everything?" I met her gaze steadily. "I'm not running away. I'm making a choice about how to spend my retirement years, just as you and David need to make choices about your finances." "We got another notice from the mortgage company," David said, his voice low. "And the school won't let the kids register for next year unless we pay the outstanding balance." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it. Not for them, but for Emma and Jack. "Sorry?" Jennifer's voice rose. "You did this to us." "No, Jennifer. You did this to yourselves. You chose to live beyond your means. You chose to rely on my support rather than adjust your lifestyle. Those were your choices, not mine." David sank onto the sofa, head in his hands. "We can't afford the house without your help, Mom. We'll have to sell. The kids will have to change. Schools. Everything we've built. Everything I paid for," I corrected gently. He looked up, his expression pained. "Yes, everything you paid for. Is that what you want to hear? That we've been living off your generosity? Fine, we have been. But cutting us off without warning? The warning was 5 years in the making, David. Every time you treated me like an ATM rather than a mother. Every time you excluded me from family decisions while expecting me to fund them. The Christmas exclusion was just the final signal that I needed to stop enabling this dynamic." Jennifer paced the room, agitated. "So that's it? You're punishing us because we wanted one Christmas to ourselves?" I shook my head. "This isn't punishment, Jennifer. It's a correction. I've consulted with my financial advisor. At the rate I was supporting you, I would have been completely out of savings within 4 years. What then? Would you have supported me?" The question hung in the air. David and Jennifer exchanged glances but didn't answer. "That's what I thought," I said quietly. "What about the children?" David asked. "They didn't do anything wrong." "No, they didn't. That's why I'm setting up education trusts for both of them. The money will go directly to their tuition, not through you or Jennifer. Jennifer's eyes widened. You're still paying for their school? I'm ensuring they have educational opportunities. That's different from bankrolling your lifestyle. David looked up, a mix of relief and shame on his face. Mom, thank you for the kids. It was the first genuine gratitude I'd heard from him in years. There are conditions, I continued. The trusts will cover their education through college, provided they maintain certain grade standards. But it doesn't cover extracurriculars, uniforms, or other expenses. Those are your responsibility as parents. Jennifer looked like she wanted to argue but thought better of it. The offer was too generous to refuse even with conditions. What about the house? David asked. That's your decision to make. If you can't afford it, selling might be the responsible choice. But, David, I interrupted gently, you're 42 years old. It's time to stand on your own feet. Both of you. He fell silent, the truth of my words finally sinking in. From my bedroom, I could hear Emma and Jack laughing at something on TV. The sound reminded me of what was really important here. Not the house, not the prestige, but the family bonds that had been stretched so thin. The children are welcome to visit me anytime, I said. And so are you, as family, not as financial dependents. David nodded slowly. I understand. Jennifer looked less convinced, but she remained silent. It wasn't a perfect resolution. There were still hurt feelings, still adjustments to be made. But it was a start. A start to a new chapter where I valued myself enough to say no, and where, maybe, just maybe, they would learn to value me for more than my checkbook. 3 months later, I stood on the screened porch of my yellow cottage, watching the sunrise over the Atlantic. Sea Pines had quickly become home in a way my condo never had. The small community was filled with people in similar life stages, most retired, many reinventing themselves after loss or major life changes. I'd joined a book club that met weekly at the community center. I'd taken up watercolor painting, something I'd always wanted to try but never had time for. I'd even made friends with my neighbors on both sides. Harriet, a retired librarian who kept me supplied with mystery novels, and Ben, a widower who shared my interest in gardening. My phone chimed with a text message. Emma, Grandma, can we still come this weekend? Dad says yes, but Mom is being weird about it. I smiled and texted back, Of course, I can't wait to see you. So much had changed in 3 months. David and Jennifer had indeed sold the Tudor house, moving to a smaller home in a less prestigious neighborhood. David had taken a steady job with an established investment firm, giving up his struggling independent practice. Jennifer had started working full-time at her real estate agency rather than treating it as a hobby. The children had transferred to the local public school. Emma had initially been devastated but quickly found her place in the advanced literature program. Jack had adjusted even more easily, thriving in the school's robotics club. My relationship with David was slowly healing. Our weekly phone calls were stilted at first, but gradually became more natural. He had finally acknowledged, without prompting, how much I had sacrificed for them. The apology had been awkward but sincere. Jennifer remained distant, still resentful of the changes forced upon her lifestyle. She rarely joined our video calls and had yet to visit my new home. I tried not to let it bother me. Some relationships needed more time to heal. Others never would. The doorbell rang, interrupting my morning reflection. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door to find David standing there, alone. David, what a surprise. I wasn't expecting you until the weekend with the children. He shifted awkwardly on the porch. I know. I wanted to come early. To talk. Just us. I invited him in, watching as he took in my new home. The cottage was nothing like my old condo, bright and airy, decorated with coastal colors and comfortable furniture. Paintings from my new hobby hung on the walls alongside photographs of the family. This is nice, Mom, he said, sounding genuinely impressed. It suits you. Thank you. I love it here. We settled in the living room with coffee. David seemed nervous, fidgeting with his cup. How's the new job? I asked, breaking the silence. Good, steady, less pressure than trying to run my own firm. He hesitated. Mom, I've been doing a lot of thinking these past few months. Oh, he set his cup down. I was angry at first, felt betrayed, like you'd pulled the rug out from under us without warning. I nodded but didn't interrupt. But then I started looking at our expenses, really looking at them for the first time in years, and I realized, he shook his head, we were living completely beyond our means. The house, the schools, Jennifer's shopping, my attempts to keep up with wealthier colleagues. None of it was sustainable. No, I agreed softly. It wasn't. We should have been more responsible. I should have been more responsible. Instead, I let you shoulder the burden. He met my eyes directly. I'm sorry, Mom. Truly sorry. The apology hung in the air between us. Simple but profound. Thank you, David. That means a lot. The thing is, he continued, I never really saw how much you were giving up. I just assumed you had plenty, that it wasn't a hardship. You never asked. No, I didn't. He ran a hand through his hair. And I never thought about what would happen to you down the road if you kept supporting us. That was selfish. I reached over and squeezed his hand. We both made mistakes. I should have been more transparent about my situation. No, Mom. This one's on me. I was taking advantage, even if I didn't want to admit it to myself. We talked for another hour, more openly than we had in years. David told me about the adjustments they'd made, downsizing, budgeting, living within their actual income for the first time. It hadn't been easy, but they were managing. The kids are actually doing better, he admitted. Their new school has programs ours didn't, and they seem less stressed. I think they were picking up on our financial anxiety more than we realized. Children are perceptive that way. He nodded. Emma talks about you all the time. She's so excited. For this weekend. Me too. David hesitated. Jennifer might come this time. She's trying. I'd like that, I said, and meant it. After he left to check into his hotel, I returned to my porch, reflecting on our conversation. It wasn't perfect reconciliation, but it was honest. A new foundation built on truth rather than financial dependence. That weekend was the first time all four of them visited my cottage. Jennifer was stiff at first, but softened as she saw how happy the children were to be with me. Emma and Jack spent hours exploring the beach, collecting shells, and helping me in my small garden. We had a simple dinner on the porch, watching the sunset over the water. No catering, no pretense, just family being family. Grandma, Emma said as we cleared the dishes, I like your house better than our old one. Oh, why's that? It feels happy here. She glanced toward her parents, lowering her voice. Our old house always felt, I don't know, tense, like Mom and Dad were worried all the time, out of the mouths of babes. Sometimes smaller is better, I told her. Not just houses, but lives too. Less stuff, less worry. She nodded sagely. Plus, you have the ocean. That I do. Later that evening, after the children were asleep in the guest room, David, Jennifer, and I sat on the porch with glasses of wine. The conversation was sometimes awkward, sometimes warm, but increasingly genuine. The education trusts for the children, Jennifer said suddenly. I haven't thanked you properly for that. I nodded, acknowledging her words. It means a lot, she continued. Knowing their education is secure, even if we. She glanced at David. Even if we're still figuring out our finances, he finished for her. They deserve that security, I said, and I'm happy I can provide it. Jennifer took a sip of wine, her next words clearly difficult for her. I'm sorry about Christmas, about excluding you. It was unkind. It wasn't a complete apology for everything, but it was a start. Thank you, Jennifer. As they prepared to leave on Sunday, Emma hugged me tightly. Can we come for Christmas, Grandma? Here at the beach? I looked at David and Jennifer, raising an eyebrow in question. David smiled. We'd like that, Mom, if the invitation is open. It is. Always. I watched them drive away, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. The relationship was healing. Not perfect, but healing. We were rebuilding on new terms, with clearer boundaries and more honest communication. That night, I sat on my porch swing, listening to the rhythmic sound of waves against the shore. The decision I'd made 3 months ago, to stop the financial support, to value myself enough to say no, had been the right one. Painful, yes. Complicated, absolutely. But right. I had learned that true family doesn't depend on financial transactions. True love doesn't come with invoices attached. And sometimes, the most generous thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling their dependence. As for me, I had found a new life. A simpler one, yes, but richer in all the ways that truly mattered. New friends, new hobbies, new perspectives, and a family relationship that, while still healing, was finally based on mutual respect rather than financial obligation. At brunch, my daughter-in-law had said, We've decided not to invite you for Christmas. I had just nodded, but when I canceled the catering and stopped paying the mortgage, suddenly everyone had time to call me. Sometimes it takes losing something to realize its true value. They had lost their financial safety net. I had gained my self-respect, and in the end, perhaps we had all found something more valuable: the chance to build a relationship based on genuine connection rather than silent transaction. As I watched the stars appear one by one over the ocean, I smiled. This Christmas would be different, smaller, simpler, but infinitely more meaningful, and I wouldn't be missing it for the world.